Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is George Ploss, and I'm the director of the NetSuite Accelerator. And while all of you continue to trickle on, I just want to give you a brief overview of what's going to come from today's exciting event. So, in just a few minutes, I'm going to bring on our NetSuite founder and executive vice president, Evan Goldberg, for a fireside chat with Monique Rodriguez, the founder of Mielle Organics. Now, in case you've never heard of Mielle, the company was founded by Monique in 2014 with the mission of making organic skin and hair products using natural ingredients for healthier results. Mielle is now sold in over 100,000 retail stores in 87 countries. So, Evan and Monique will discuss her entrepreneurial journey, which begins with an unconventional start. And to check that out, please watch the movie. And also, it's also how she's built a successful business. Then I'll introduce Traci Wade, Oracle's Vice President of Global Diversity and Inclusion, to join Evan and Monique for a panel discussion around the future of Black business. We'll dive into everything from raising capital to hiring, allyship, to getting Black business leaders the resources and tools they need for sustainable business growth. And yes, we definitely get into the all new NetSuite Accelerator, my favorite topic right now. Now, if you've never joined us before, we always encourage you to participate. Use the comments to give us a shout out. Tell us where you're tuning in from, or even share your thoughts and advice on topics we cover. We know you're joining us from all different parts of the world, industries, and backgrounds. So we want to hear from you. And with that, I'm excited to get things going. Please join me in a very warm, albeit virtual welcome for NetSuite founder and executive vice president, Evan Goldberg, and Mielle Organics founder, Monique Rodriguez.
Thanks, George. And hello, Monique. Thanks so much for joining us. And really excited to learn a bit more about Mielle and your journey. So it all started in your own kitchen, is that right?
Correct. Yes. In my kitchen, to the garage, to the basement, and then to the warehouse.
That's a journey. That's a journey a lot of us are taking right now, actually, in our work. So how did you take your idea and turn it into reality? Sort of what steps did you take? Can you walk us through that?
Of course. So it was literally, I stepped out on faith because I had no idea what I was doing. I had an idea. I had a passion for beauty and hair. And I've always had that burning desire to be an entrepreneur ever since I was young. And I've always loved the beauty space ever since I was young. But growing up, I didn't see women entrepreneurs, especially Black women entrepreneurs that were running businesses. So, growing up where I come from, you can't be what you don't see, because I didn't have that example. And so, I thought the only way for me to enter into the beauty industry was by way of becoming like a hair model. And so I would beg for my mom to take me to like these different model calls when I was younger. And she would take me to some, but at one point she got, a little frustrated because she's like, listen, I'm not going to be driving back and forth to these places. She really didn't see like, the vision, the dream. And for her, it was about, how do I teach my daughter to survive? And, it was a traditional, you have to go to school, you got to go to college, and you work, and you find a stable job, and you work that job until it's time for you to retire. But in my mind, I was like, that just can't be, all to life. And that can't be the only route to success. And so, I did that because I didn't know any better. At the age of 18, you do what your parents say. Well, most 18-year-olds, I did.
Well, that's my son.
So I went to nursing school, and I did that for 8 years. And, I worked, and I felt like I was in a box. I'm a very creative person. I'm a visionary. And I felt that I couldn't be myself working as a nurse. Of course, I love working with women. I serve women, working as a labor and delivery nurse. But it wasn't something that was necessarily fulfilling for me. So, in 2013, I went through a very tragic time with the loss of my son when I was 8 months pregnant. And, for me, as tragic as it was, I felt very lost, down, depressed, and I was in a very dark place. And what allowed me to get myself out of that dark place was, number one, developing myself spiritually and having a closer connection with God. And two, it was, doing something that I love, and, to take my mind off of what I was going through. And so I looked to social media as a creative outlet for me to express myself creatively. So it started with, me just talking about my hair, and, I wanted to fix my heat damaged hair, and I wanted to embrace my natural curls. And so I went on this natural hair journey, and I would, do a lot of research and read about different ingredients and make little concoctions and really post about it on social media. It wasn't, with the intention of, oh, I'm going to start this amazing brand. It started as a hobby, like, hey, I like talking about hair. Let's talk about how I'm going to fix my hair. And with me talking about fixing my own hair and making my concoctions and sharing it on social media, I was, helping other women and didn't even realize it. And women were just gravitating towards the information that I was providing. And they started requesting to like buy the concoctions that I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I had the light bulb moment. And I said, I think I'm on to something. So I was, doing something that I love unintentionally. And, it was like God just revealed to me what my true purpose was. And he started opening up doors for me because I didn't even realize what I was doing. And that's how Mielle started, with just me going on social media as a hobby, having a conversation about hair care.
That's great. And it's great when you're able to turn your passion into a business and use that vehicle to share your passion and your ideas. So, but when it came time to really make it into a business, how did you take that step, and what were some of the kind of challenges that you initially felt and overcame?
Yeah. So one of the challenges that I had to overcome was just, not coming from the business space, having a background in nursing. I had to, educate myself, and I did a lot of research. I went to Google University.
Okay. Yeah.
Just trying to figure out like what's the first step that I should take to start a business. And I researched, and I found that, okay, I need to have an LLC. I need to create a business bank account. I need to make sure I have a good tax accountant, and I have the best tax structure for my business. And then after I had like the knowledge of like the basic fundamentals of like how to just get my business registered, get my EIN number. So then I said, now I need to do a website. I met with the web designer that I found on Instagram, told her my idea, gave her the vision of how I wanted my website to look. Then I knew I needed to find a chemist, because the formulations that I was creating is nothing that you would want to put on your hair now, because it was stuff that I was making at home and it needed to be preserved. So I had to find a chemist, and I found one on Google. I found a lot of different chemists and manufacturers, and everyone told me no because I didn't have a lot of money to meet the minimum requirements. But I finally found one that had very low minimums and that was willing to work with me and bring my idea to fruition. Found the chemist, had the website, I had my EIN, LLC, all the foundational aspect of the business. And then, I just went for it. I really didn't start with much, and I launched the website on May 23rd with just one product. The whole development of the product took about a good 5 to 6 months. And so once I had, I was working simultaneously on my product and the website and all of the business structure. And so once I was ready to have once the product was ready to go, I launched a website, and I said, hey, I'm gonna just go and see what happens. And the bottle of oil that I sold, which is our mint almond oil, we still have today, it sold like crazy. And so then I knew I was really onto something. So now I knew I needed to really start asking more questions and doing a lot more research on how to brand, how to market, how to make sure that I'm shipping appropriately. I started with the USPS, and it was a lot of learning curves with that, shipping international, because people started requesting for the product to go international. So it was a really just trial and error, learn as I go, because I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it.
It's fantastic. I'm getting blasted by the California sun here, so I'm going to move a little bit. Okay, so that's great. But I mean, as you started to scale the business, you said that, kind of getting enough money to get that chemist in the door. I mean, money, I'm sure, became an issue in scaling. So, how did you go about raising money? What were some of the challenges there? And how did you overcome them?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges in scaling a business is funding, especially coming from, where I come from. When I first started, my nursing paychecks and my husband's paychecks is what funded the business. We bootstrap. So every time we would sell product, we would take the profits and invest that, back into the company and keep growing. Once we got into retail is when, bootstrapping no longer started to work for us. And so, we entered into our first retail chain, which was Sally Beauty, in 2016. And I remember scratching my head trying to figure out how we were going to fund our first order, because when you are in retail and they place an order, you have to fund that. And you have to make sure that you meet their deadlines to ship that order on time. And so we didn't have the funding to do that. And so my husband, because with relationships and connections, he had a former friend from his previous job that, they had a great relationship, and he went to him and pitched, our business, what we were looking to do, how we were going to grow over the next few years. And he sold them on the numbers and how we were growing, because from the day that we launched, we saw significant growth month over month, day after day. The company was just growing and exploding. And so, the guy that my husband was friends with, he believed in us, and he gave us an initial loan to fund our Sally's PO order to go into Sally Beauty. So that was our first initial raise. And that was just a loan that we had to pay back. It wasn't any ownership in the company. And so, our second raise was a friends and family raise. And that was in 2019. We partnered with New Voices. Richard Lou Dennis, who's the former founder of Shea Moisture, is also the founder of New Voices. So that was our friends and family raise. And we raised $5 million for a very small percentage of our company. So, but again, that was from 2016 up until 2019. We still had to maintain and continue to bootstrap the company and let the company fund the growth until we were able to partner with New Voices. And then as of most recently, we were able to partner with Berkshire, and we recently signed a 9-figure investment deal with them to help grow and scale the company. And I'm saying that, and I know it sounds super, super easy, but it was extremely hard because, especially for Black women, founder-led companies, is not easy for us to raise funds. Less than 1% of African-American women have secured $1 million in funding, which is a very sad narrative. But, for us, we got a lot of no's. Before we received our first investment from Richard Lou Dennis, we were at the table with a previous investor that, waited till the last hour and told us no, they were not going to invest in us. And so right when we needed the money the most. And so, we had to prove ourselves. We had to be a very profitable brand to have leverage to dictate, the terms that we wanted. And so a lot of people, when they're starting businesses, there's not a lot of leverage in the very beginning. And I always tell business owners, it's all about, where your foreseeable future, where you want to see your company grow, and what are your end goals. And for us, it was always maintaining majority ownership of our company. And for us to maintain majority ownership, we had to make sure that we had a very profitable growth, healthy EBITDA margins. And so that way, when we were able to meet with, private equity firms, we were able to dictate the terms that we wanted. And that was to maintain control over our company so we can control the destiny of the Mielle brand. And we were able to do so.
Wow, that's what a journey, and that's great that you were able to kind of beat the odds, because the odds for new businesses are tough, and you have to persevere. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's great that now you're in 100,000 stores. It's absolutely incredible. So when you think about the challenges you faced, you think about building businesses in diverse communities. What are some of the, besides the funding challenge, what are some of the other challenges that you see in building a diverse community, getting them as customers, but also just working with everybody you have to work with to make your business successful?
Yeah, outside of funding, it's also the lack of resources and expertise. Mentorship. As I mentioned, when I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. My husband and I, we were figuring this out as this engine was going. And we made a lot of costly business mistakes. And some of those costly mistakes could have been avoided if we had the right, mentorship and resources and expertise, that was surrounded around us, so we can ask questions, and not make as costly mistakes as we did. Now we have that because we've been able to learn from our mistakes and surround ourselves with people, and the right resources and the right expertise, that we can ask the right questions. But, especially in our community, we just don't have that type of access. And so it's important for, Melvin and I to share our story and to, do things like this so we can help educate our community on, how to go about getting funding, how to make sure that your company is financially sound and stable before going out to pitch to investors. How do you make sure that you have leverage? How do you have profitable growth and not just top line sales and nothing to show for it in profit? And so, we want to help change that narrative and create more access and resources and expertise outside of just the funding, as well.
Great. Well, that's exactly right. Spot on. That's exactly why we're here. And it's fantastic that you're able to provide your expertise to others that are sort of in the situation you were in when you were back in your kitchen wondering, how do I do this? So, I just mentioned, so many startups don't make it. What are some of the things that you think, allowed you to beat the odds and be successful?
Some of the things that I feel allowed me to beat the odds and be successful is, number one, having the spirit of being resilient and having tenacity, because, at one point our company was not profitable. And, there was a point in time where we couldn't even meet payroll. We were not even paying ourselves because we wanted to make sure that our employees were paid before, we paid ourselves. We were like trying to keep our business afloat. And, those are tough times. And, like they say, the 5-year mark is when you can see if your business is going to make it or not. And I feel that it's the 5-year mark to determine if you're in it for entrepreneurship or if you're doing it for another reason. Because if you're truly in it to serve others and you're passionate about what you're doing, at that 5-year mark, so to speak, when things can get challenging or, your finances are out of whack and out of order, are you going to continue to keep going? And for us, when we didn't have any profit, when, we were trying to figure out if our business was going to keep going, like we still had the passion to keep the engine going. Like we could have turned around and said, okay, we're going to give up because, we don't see any money coming in, but we kept going, we kept pushing. And that is the spirit of, being resilient. When things are down and when you have challenges, are you going to look at that challenge as an opportunity to sink, or are you going to look at it as an opportunity to swim? So you definitely have to have a great spirit of resilience and tenacity to keep going despite the odds.
So, one of the things you had to do was get into retail, and, sort of what were those negotiations like, and how would you, sort of counsel people that have a product and they're trying to get into sort of mass distribution?
I would say if you're trying to get into mass distribution, make sure that your company is ready. Make sure you have a good customer demand. Make sure you have created community, and make sure you have profitable growth. Because going into retail can also be very expensive. There are different fees associated with being on the shelf. It's great to say I'm on the shelves of Target, but there are fees. You have to pay for that shelf space, and you have to make sure that your products are turning at shelf, because if your products are not turning and they're not selling, it's going to cost you a lot more money to come out of retail than it was to go in. And, I've seen and heard businesses that have gone upside down because they went into retail too fast because they didn't have the demand for the products, nor did they have the financial stability in their company. And they went into retail and didn't move units, and then they had to come out and it cost them more money. So, make sure that your company is financially sound. Make sure you have built a community. When we first entered into retail, Sally Beauty actually approached us because of the demand and the buzz that they saw on social media about the Mielle brand. And so remember, I had only been doing this for a year, but the company had exploded within a year when Sally Beauties knocked at our door in 2015 to have a meeting with us. And usually when retailers or when you approach retailers, I know everyone's story is different. I have business associates that have looked up the buyer on LinkedIn and sent the buyers cold emails to, try to reach out to them. But I always tell people to really focus on just being great and over-serving your community, because if you are doing the best with over-serving, you're going to build a great community, and your community is going to start asking and being the biggest advocate for you, for the retail partners, and they're going to contact you. And that was my story, because our customers were great advocates. They got the attention of Sally's. Sally's contacted us, and it was an easy sell. We didn't have to sell to go into Sally's. They already knew that they wanted us. And of course, we also had a sales broker. I also recommend finding a good broker that's strong in their retail to help you negotiate those contracts, especially if you come from, no business background. You're going to need some expertise to help understand and negotiate those contracts. And that's present at the table with you to make sure that you have the best shelf positioning, the best negotiations on sales and promos, so you can be successful at shelf. So that would be my advice.
That's great. It's great that you have that, all that experience and you're sharing with us. Thanks so much. Last question, you reached this great success already. As you think about the future, how do you think about that? And I think a lot of people watching this, starting from scratch, they want to be in the position that you are, thinking, being already so scaled, what's next? How do you keep yourself motivated? And what's the inspiration for the future?
What's next is, continuing to develop innovative products that meets the needs of my consumers, and expanding into different arenas of the beauty industry. So right now we're in hair, we have a little bit of skin, and I really want to broaden that horizon and be a destination beauty brand for all beauty needs. So that's for hair, skin, and body. So that is what I'm looking forward to. And what keeps me motivated is my consumers, talking to them, how I connect with them, how I engage with them, and really understanding and hearing what their needs are, and how our products have changed their lives and, have given them much more confidence. It inspires me to just keep creating great products that meets their needs and over-serving them and delivering them with the best ingredients and the best quality, so they can have popping hair and popping curls, I like to say.
Fantastic. And I'm sure the future for Mielle is incredibly bright. Thank you, Monique, for sharing some words of wisdom with us.
Thank you. No problem.
Wow, what an incredible journey. I mean, as a Black dad and as a Black girl dad, not only is your business journey inspiring, but also your personal journey. I see you channeling the spirit of Madam C.J. Walker, as you go. So, I can't wait to take what you've learned and chat about it further and how we're going to apply some of those lessons as we look at the future of Black business. All right, but before we get into that, I want to first welcome Traci Wade to join the group. Traci is Oracle's Vice President and Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion. Hey, Traci, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Monique, your story is so inspiring. And I'm glad I had a few moments with you prior to this product session to learn more about your product. Because as a Black woman that wears her hair naturally 95% of the time, I'm always looking at achieving what you shared, the pop and curl, and making sure that is on point. So thank you for being here today, sharing your inspiring story. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Of course.
This is a good morning. All this Black excellence, just great.
How about that?
All right. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready to get right into it. And the first question that I have is going to be directed at Monique. So Monique, I want to bring it back to your founding story. You said one of your biggest challenges was access to capital. What has to change in the private equity and the venture capital space for it to be more inclusive?
Yeah, no, what has to change is, just for us to have a seat at the table. We are African Americans who build great businesses with great value. We have great connection with our consumers. We know how to be very resourceful and to make something out of nothing. We just need help. We just need the help. We need the access. We need the expertise. We need the funding. And we just need the opportunity to present and to tell our story and to tell our passion with private equity firms. And, I think that needs to change. It's just to give more opportunity to Black businesses to present themselves and to tell their stories and to create funds that are also led by African Americans as well, to create a community so we can spread the wealth all throughout, and I
Right.
think what it takes is just to provide the opportunity, let our voices be heard more.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, like, and it's funny how you talk about that, because right now more Black businesses have been founded over the past 2 years than have been in the past 25.
Yeah.
And as Evan mentioned earlier, we know that a majority of startups fail. And for Black owned businesses, you talked about access to funding and needing to change. But well, what else? How do we increase the number of Black startups to succeed? For example, you brought up mentorship earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really just education. How do we create more educational programs that can help support, Black entrepreneurs, that can teach the basic fundamentals of, how to start a business, how to get your business off the ground, how do you get funding for your business, how do you pitch, how do you create like a pitch deck to present to, private equity investors, like all of that stuff I had to learn throughout the process. Like, I didn't even know where to start. We also use an investment banker. Like, the investment banker can help educate you and help put these pitch decks together, help you to create your narrative and how to craft and to speak to private equity investors. Because honestly, being a Black woman, it was intimidating for me to have these conversations with these big conglomerate private equity firms. I didn't know, was I saying the right thing? How do I communicate? How do I make sure that, I'm conveying the right message? And, I kind of suffer from like imposter syndrome, but I had to remind myself that, I deserve a seat at the table. What I have, they want to be a part of. What I have built, that I have built something very great and very valuable. And they want to be a part and be along for the ride because of what I built. And so, it's just instilling that confidence and that education. And I think that once you have the education and you have practice, talking and pitching and, the things to say and how to put your financial story together, the more practice and the more educated you are, the more confident you are with presenting to investors. And so it really starts with just, making sure that there are more resources to educate us and more programs to help us learn about pitch decks and learn about funding, so we can present to private equity.
Yeah. Thank you for that. No, I 1000% agree. Evan, so that's the sort of support is what we're hoping to offer with the NetSuite Accelerator, which we announced last week. So Evan, can you tell us a bit more about the program and our commitment to entrepreneurs and leaders from diverse communities?
Well, actually, you're the expert, so I'll just talk a little bit about the inspiration. It really came out of us, back in the summer of 2020, looking at, what else can we do to be sort of a change agent. And, what we do best as an organization is provide tools and technology to help businesses succeed and grow. And so we decided to really, we need to make a focus on a segment of businesses that really potentially have been underserved, that haven't had the resources and the help that NetSuite can provide. And we've done this, for years and years in the nonprofit sector. But, that really thinking about how we could take some of our learning there and apply it to new businesses and help them beat the odds. But George, maybe you can add sort of a little bit on some of the details of how we got to where we are today on that program.
Yeah. So, in spirit of what you were saying, looking, after the summer of 2020 and looking at figuring out ways in which I could help and serve, Monique, you were talking about serving your customers and serving your communities. I was looking at what tools do I have at my disposal, or do I have access to help Black entrepreneurs and Black businesses and grow. And I worked in NetSuite, and NetSuite's it's a tier one ERP that in addition to both funding and mentorship, I'm sure you use the reporting tools and the visibility that our tool allows to help communicate the vision of your business successfully. So I was thinking about that, and how can we position it to help, to recreate this story, to recreate Monique's story. And so the NetSuite Accelerator was launched, and it's an accelerator in which we want to accelerate this Black excellence and Black entrepreneurship and growth across all sectors, so that we can help so that we can help sustain the market of Black innovation and Black entrepreneurship. So yeah, it's exciting, and I know that I'd love to talk about it more, but I want to position this back over to Evan and Traci. So to me, the future of Black business also depends on what we're doing at a company level. The programs and mentorship and guidance we're offering future Black business leaders right now. And this all starts with intentionality. And, for the audience, we're defining intentionality in this context as being the deliberate incorporation of valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion as a key strategic pillar in regards to the organization's success. So switching gears a bit, how can business leaders be more intentional with their DEI efforts? So Traci, could we start with you?
Happy to. One of the things I lean back into, what Monique was sharing is really, as we think about DEI leaders, and certainly as it relates to Black entrepreneurs and how we may be able to support, is the allyship. The mentorship needs to be there. I mean, I was looking at some data points. And there was over 135,000 Black businesses, and we know that Black businesses, and I heard about the failure rate, they do fail at a higher rate, and that's definitive to statistics. So how can leaders help to support and give that guidance, give that insight to other to Blacks in entrepreneurship, others who may not look like them, help them along that experience. Monique shared that had she had some of those additional insights and knowledge and having to deal with the culture of imposter syndrome, where you're not sure of what language, am I using the right language? Am I showing up in the right way? So allyship is a critical element in setting up Black entrepreneurs, as well as just Black employees in corporate America, in a better way, where people could be authentic, where they could feel safe, where they could have these real conversations, and where they have others who've been there before them, gone through the loopholes before them, fell into the pitfalls before them, can assist and give them that insight, so that those failures do not have to be replicated. So, Monique, I'm inspired by what you're saying, that you're trying to touch others as well in the industry, because we can't just keep this knowledge inside. So what can others do as allies? What can corporations do is provide that insight. Having Evan part of this today, and where he's, talking and engaging with Monique and having the discussions are incredibly important. But going the next step is that allyship and supporting others who may not look like you, who don't have the same experience as you, they don't have the same backgrounds as you, is how we really start to move the needle here and make sure that we're seeing that continuum of success in corporations and entrepreneurs such as Monique here today.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. Well said. I'm sorry, Monique, did you?
No, I was just saying, well said. That was great.
Evan, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would only say that, hearing you guys talk about Monique's business when we were, earlier, it's critical for us, because we serve such a diverse community of businesses, and we hope to serve an even more diverse community of businesses led by people of all backgrounds and all experiences, that we as an organization have to also reflect that diversity. So at the same time as we're trying to branch out and help new businesses that come, from new experiences, new backgrounds, we're trying to do that within Oracle and within NetSuite. and reach out to places that we haven't looked for employees before, bring them in, know that they have different experiences and different background, and making sure that they have the support that they need and the mentorship to be successful. And that the two things really run in tandem, building diversity in our sort of customer base and building diversity in our organization.
Yeah. Well said, and I definitely agree. So Traci, allyship, just to level set, a little bit, as allyship is discussed frequently in DE&I conversations. How would you define allyship, and what are some tangible tips for practicing allyship?
So allyship is helping those who may look like you and not look like you, and giving them that support and to stand them up, help them through the continuum of whatever that success looks like for the organization, for individuals. Examples of good allyship is first being a good listener, active listening. Many times when we have allies that come in, they are already dictating where this is what you can do. If you did this, but it's active listening to better understand how you can support someone. Understanding others' journeys as well is critical and important. So educating your own self many times. I mean, as a Black woman in corporate America, many times I ask, what is your knowledge? What's your insight? I don't want to have to re-educate every time and have to start at the beginning and speak every time about the Black experience, because it is vast, it is complicated, and that's one thing. So just being able to take that time to increase your own education, be an advocate in spaces where I may not be or others may not be, speaking up and advocating at those times. That is how you could be a really great ally as well. But giving the space and time to individuals so that they can learn, get insight is just incredibly valuable, and understanding what's important to that person when you are, or that community or that group, as you are standing and being an ally is essential to the success of allyship.
Yeah, it sounds like allyship is just a tenet of good leadership, right?
Many times it is, absolutely.
Yeah. Certainly listening is an incredible component of leadership. And so I think that's actually a good analogy.
Yeah. So Traci, is there a correlation between, a diverse workforce and the success of the organization? And if so, how can businesses get better at, let's say, diverse recruiting?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. When you bring different people, different mindsets, and it's beyond just our race and our gender. It is many times, where do we grow up? Where do we go to school? Where do we live? And what part of the region, US? Where globally? Our abilities or our sexual orientations. That is how you get to the wonderful complexity of thought leadership, which inevitably leads into innovation, of which most companies are all focused on. How do we innovate? How do we continue to expand our products, our commitment in the workforce? So diversity and inclusion and having that diversity within your organization is incredibly important. Plus, as you think about from a business perspective, many customers want to make sure that when they're engaging, that there's diversity in the organizations where they're doing business, that they can see someone who may look like them, that may have some of the same background and experiences as them. And so I think that's another critical element. What we need to do is expand beyond, think about if it's certainly recent college hires, we can hire more for historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions. Sometimes the path of success is not always college and university. Monique, you talked about that. So how we can impact non-traditional talent is something that we're looking at Oracle. We're looking at non-traditional talent that may not have decided that college was their path and their direction, and engaging them here into Oracle. So one, we need to open up mindsets thinking beyond, encouraging our hiring managers and leaders to think beyond their typical profiles of talent, the typical universities that they recruit from, the typical profiles of the talent that's coming in, and be able to lean in and certainly think about the ultimate success. What does the experiences of those who may not look like them also bring? And I think that's how we start to lean into that great thought leadership, and why having that diverse workforce is valuable to organizations.
Yeah, no, totally. When I talk to leaders all the time, and I say, lived experiences and are incredibly important to solving problems, right? The market is dynamic, and if businesses need to pivot, if you take, people who have the same education, same background, and are roughly the same age, and you try to get them to solve, different problems, they're going to come out with the relative same solution. And so, the value of diversity is really in the output of the organization's product. So yeah, thank you for that. So Evan and Monique, as we wrap up Black History Month, how do we move forward to ensure that what we learned or discussed today isn't only confined to February, and that it's intrinsic in our actions as a business? Monique, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, I would say, being consistent and doing exactly what you guys are doing now, not just having these conversations during Black History Month, but having these conversations 365 days of a year, because we can see that it is needed in our community, very prominently. So, just continuing to have these conversations, continuing to pour back into the community, continuing to educate, continuing to provide resources. And, I would say those are the conversations that need to be had on a continuous basis, not just, once a month.
Thank you. Yeah. Evan?
Yeah, exactly what Monique said. I mean, Black History Month and Latin History Month, Women's History Month, these are good opportunities for us to examine and make sure that what we're doing consistently over the entire course of the year is working. And this what we did today is great, and it happens to be in Black History Month, but I want to do it again in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. And just to we talked about this earlier, the NetSuite Accelerator, it being an example of our long-term commitment, not just to the market, but to the communities and the spaces in which we occupy and serve, I think is an example of that. And so so I mean, we've got to wrap, and I can't believe that's all the time that we have here for today. This was amazing. Monique, Evan, Traci, I really appreciate you all joining and making this an insightful but also authentic conversation. For all of you tuning in, I want you to make sure that you check out what we're doing with the NetSuite Accelerator. We've provided a link in the caption of the event, but you can also go to netsuite.com/accelerator. Thank you all so much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.